guys, it's Helen Hartsmith, and I'm here with
Cathy.
I seriously forgot how to start this. I hit record. Guys, I'm sorry. This might be a hot mess, but bear with us.
Could be. We might be doing a lot of cutting.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. So, hey, it's been a minute.
So, hey, how you been?
I feel like I've kind of had this one-sided conversation already because I recently posted my first video on the channel and
Right.
I thought it was a year, but it looks like it's been 10 months. But I mean, that's staying close to a year.
Sure.
So yeah, so I'm like really in this mode of how did I do this? How you like talking to myself again? So yay that it's the both of us. So welcome guys. Cathy welcome back. Or if you're new,
right.
welcome. So Cathy and I
We're still alive.
we're still here and kicking. But we're trying to get back in this mode. There's a lot of, trying to find the new normal again.
Yeah, and I don't think the pandemic was kind to anyone.
Yes.
Certainly not anyone we know for a multitude of reasons.
Right. So as you can probably read, the title of this episode is How the Pandemic Affected My Path. So we're going to get into some things about like what's happened for us in the last couple of years. But before we do that, there's business. We remembered this much. What's that business?
Correspondence
of the week. So we're going to be getting into some territory where we're going to be sharing some personal stuff about what's happened with us on our path.
Well, and personally too, because you
right,
can't
and
really
yeah.
separate.
So we wanted to find a correspondence that would kind of play into that, as we always do. We always look for a correspondence that corresponds with what we're talking about.
Right.
It's kind of all in the name. So, Cathy, what did we choose to talk about today?
We chose copper.
Copper. Copper is one of the 7 sacred metals. Metals, not medals, metals. And it is ruled by the planet Venus, which corresponds with the letter I and amethyst, and also corresponds with Taurus and Libra, those signs. It's sacred to the goddess and to the goddess Oya.
Goddess and Oya.
And Oya. The goddess and the goddess
Right.
Oya.
So it is, it's also sacred to Venus, who is the goddess of love, beauty, art, balance, harmony, and peace. And it's the harmony and peace that we want to focus on today because the pandemic has really thrown everybody, for a curve, or at least in our experience for us. So in an effort to try to spin it back to, like Helen said, the new normal, to get things back on track, we're going to focus on copper today.
Yes, so that was the correspondence of the week. So hopefully you guys aren't, here's a little side note. Hopefully you guys aren't going to be distracted. Cathy's husband is mowing. And so if there's a weird background noise, that is it.
Although I think he's on the other side of the house.
So hopefully we're okay.
And also Nala's needy. So she's been in here meowing a couple times already.
Yeah.
No guarantees.
So
Helen's, how was the pandemic for you?
I gotta say, in the beginning, first of all, I wasn't really home.
You were home a little bit.
I was home a little
because
bit,
you
but
started
that was
the bread making thing, and I
but
was
that
jealous.
but that was like into it. So in the beginning of lockdown, I continued to work because the place that I
continued
worked
to work at work.
Correct.
Because I also continued to work, but I did it right here.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I didn't really have a lot of stay home. So, you know, in the beginning, I thought this might be great. Maybe I like being by myself, blah, blah, blah. But then I quickly found, well, not quickly, the realization, you know, hit me that I'm not as introverted as some of my other friends.
I feel vindicated or violated by that statement.
So yeah, so at first it was scary as hell.
Yeah, it was scary for everybody.
And so I tried to maintain, you know, a semblance of everything's cool when it came to my spirituality. You know, I was still practicing. We were trying to adapt as a coven.
Right, because several of our coven members are immunocompromised. So we didn't have in-person anything for a long time. And my husband's mother is elderly. And at the time she was still living in her home. And we were visiting her. So our family was being very isolated. My husband was home for a couple of weeks, but then he went back to work. But I worked from home for 16 months. And our coven didn't get together in person. Mm-hmm. We didn't have in-person rituals. Everything was virtual, which was so hard.
Yeah, it was definitely not, it was not an ideal situation. And I mean, virtual, let's be real. I mean, for anybody who's listening to this, you were probably doing the same things that we were doing, you know, in terms of trying to stay in contact with, you know, people from circles or groups or covens or whatever you were a part of.
Which is hard when nobody's doing anything public.
Right. So it was definitely a less than ideal situation to try to do things like, you know, hold ritual, hold sacred space, meditate, you know, in a virtual setting. You know, there's technical glitches.
There's 4 different counties.
Right. There's internet that was overloaded at times, and, you know, static backgrounds and people not understanding that they should mute unless they're speaking. You know, there's a lot of technical things.
And it was a learning curve too, because we'd never done virtual rituals. I mean, I think we did a couple moon rituals, but that's not the same as doing a Sabbath ritual.
Well, and it's a lot different from going to that's your only option.
Right.
And so we did the best that we could as a group, as a, you know, to maintain the coven. But I think we discovered there, so guys, there might be some gaps as each of us try to formulate, like we tried very hard not to have this conversation before recording this conversation. So kind of.
So there's some things that we want to share with you about what happened with our relationships with each other and with the coven, but there's some things that we don't feel like we should share with this much of a group.
Well, because of respect.
So we might be searching for words in a couple places. So sorry about the gaps there.
Yeah.
And we might end up cutting some depending on what we throw out there. But I mean, it was difficult. And the problem is that some people are more
adaptable than others.
Yeah, more adaptable. But on the other end of that spectrum, some people need that personal interaction. They need to feel the other person's aura. They need to be in the same room. And so it's difficult to have someone who needs to be in close proximity with somebody else do a virtual ritual because they're not getting it. They're not getting the energy movement. They're not getting the feedback like they would normally get if they're in a group setting. Even if 2 or 3 people are together, I mean, they just don't get it. And it's difficult going from we're always together, always in a coven, to everybody's in their own home. And you know,
yeah, it was definitely difficult, but the problem became for us as a coven that we were doing the best that we could, and we were still trying to be together and do what we could to the extent that we could, but we felt as if there were those that frankly weren't trying.
Well, again, I think it was because they weren't getting the feedback, the personal connections that they were getting.
Yes, I understand
so
that.
It's not like they didn't want to be a part of the coven. They didn't want to be with us. The problem is they wanted to be in person, and we, as leaders of the coven, did not feel that was safe because we were trying to follow community guidelines.
Right, yeah, we weren't at a point where we could.
No, it wasn't safe.
So, I mean, I'm going back. I'm still in 2020.
Yeah,
we weren't open to be together. We weren't open to gather as a coven in 2020.
We were not.
And so we were noticing that there were only certain people that were making it to virtual rituals. And, that's hard that's hard to maintain your relationships when you don't see each other, when you don't interact with each other, when you're not at coven study. So for those of you who don't know, we make a choice as a coven. We have 24 times a year, 2 times a month that we get together. And, we weren't seeing people and we weren't hearing from people. And I know for a time I was trying to reach out to people and check on them and stuff like that. But I mean, in all honesty, I was dealing with my own mental health.
It's so hard to reach out and try to be a support system from someone else when you're drowning yourself.
Yeah, you're not okay.
It's back to that. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else.
Right.
And I tell you what, I am an introvert. I don't like people. I don't like going places. You're lucky I like you. My husband's lucky I like him. I don't like my kids, a different story. Different story we won't get into. But I was really struggling because I was alone all the time. I mean, my husband would go to work, he'd come home, and that would be the only interaction that I would get. We'd visit Randy's mom once a week. It was very, very difficult for me. And it's hard for me to reach out, pre-pandemic, because I am such an introvert. But to throw the pandemic in on it, I'm still struggling.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know that you and I have talked about this at all, but there have been times in the last 18 months where I've seriously thought of leaving the coven.
I have too.
But I'm white knuckling it, hoping that the coven survives.
Well, we've talked about a few things that we're going to be implementing to try to.
Yeah. So it got to a point where, we were noticing a real line in the sand, so to speak.
Yeah.
And where we had 2 distinct groups within the coven, and we were not even 10 people.
Right.
We were 9.
9 people.
The coven was 9 people at the time. And there were two distinct groups, and that was a hard pill for me to swallow.
Yeah. And part of it was, people needing to be together with other people. And part of it is, and I'm not naming any names or pointing any fingers, but part of it was the attitude toward the pandemic and the need for the social distancing and the vaccines and, whatever. People have differences of opinion, and that's fine. But we as leaders felt that we needed to pick the safe options, and that wasn't necessarily popular with everyone in the group.
And I mean, it wasn't necessarily popular with us.
Yeah, I don't like it either,
but that's what we had to do. It was I think being the leaders of the coven added another layer of crap for us.
Well, yeah, because if we had gotten together and somebody got sick and died, how would we have felt?
Absolutely.
I mean, really. I felt bad going to visit Randy's mom when she was at home. And there was so much that happened with her during the pandemic. It's just insane. But,
right.
And the pandemic did help, but it was on top of that. And then, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we just had, it felt like we had all of these components.
There was so much
that was,
going on.
Yeah, that was putting pressure on us. And so that...
And then Helen was still going to work all the time. And then in July of last year, my work was like, okay, you got to come back to the office. And I didn't feel ready, even though I'd been vaccinated. And, to get later on in the pandemic, we both changed jobs.
So, yeah, we did. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, there was a lot personally for us going on. And I feel like... I was doing what I could to maintain a practice. And for me, that didn't necessarily mean the things that I had that were typical for me. A daily practice pretty much, for the most part, disappeared for me.
Yeah.
My spiritual path switched to reading. Like I was concentrating on reading. Like I was searching books for the inspiration that I lost.
And my spiritual practice consisted mainly of, since I was home, I'm in the den, and the den is where my altar is. I had a white altar cloth on the altar, and I burned a white candle for the people who were sick and dying of COVID. And that was my practice.
Yeah.
Focusing that energy, doing daily prayers to Apollo about the pandemic. And that was pretty much it. I mean, we still did the coven reading because we do get together once or twice a month to do coven study where we read a book together.
But honestly, I dreaded it.
Because who's coming, and what's the attitude gonna be, and is anybody gonna show up?
Right.
And that was a lot of the issues of our stress over the pandemic.
Yeah. And so things like really came to a head at the end of last year.
Beginning of the year?
Yeah, beginning of the year.
I think it was... I can't remember.
It was leading into the beginning of 2022.
Was it before or after Realert Away?
Well, I think you and I, we do Realert Away?
We did, because we had it at...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. But we didn't in 2020.
No, we did not.
So, at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, there wasn't fighting necessarily. There was finally a lot of communication.
Right.
That was happening. And we're not sugarcoating things here. We ended up losing 2 members of the coven. They chose to leave the coven. And that was a difficult thing.
Yeah, that was hard. Not by that point unexpected. In fact, I'm almost surprised that we didn't lose more.
Right. Well, I think, at what point did we say that we were leaving rituals closed? Was that 2021?
That was when we started actually having in-person, because everybody's having a hard time not being in person. So we're like, okay, we're going to be in person, but they're going to be closed, because I'm not bringing somebody else into the ritual space, because again, if somebody gets sick and dies, it's our responsibility.
That's right, because we made the choice, so not everyone in the coven is vaccinated.
That's correct. And then we were saying, when we do open it up, at least at that point, you were going to have to be vaccinated if you were not a coven member.
Right.
And wow, nobody liked that.
Which I was really surprised by. But I mean, we opted to not make vaccination required because if you're a member, then we love you enough and trust you enough and care about you enough that we're trusting you to
be safe and smart.
And to be safe and smart with us.
And of course, it's a lot different now than it was in the beginning of 21.
Right. So at this point in time, coven-wise, we're still doing closed rituals. And I'm still struggling with my spiritual path.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not home all the time anymore because my new job, I actually have to go to work.
Right. And my new job is like...
kicking your ass.
Still kicking my butt.
Yeah, so I don't have the time to, on my, breaks or at lunch or before work, I have to spend that half hour driving to work and the half hour back again. And I'm not home to do any kind of ritual at lunch or meditation or, whatever. So it's difficult for me. I have been doing some reading, but not as much as I would like.
Yeah. So I started, if those of you who've kind of been around the channel long enough know that I am a graduate of the Temple of Witchcraft Mystery School. And in recent years, Christopher Penzak has introduced layers of classwork that extend past that 5 years of the mystery school. And it's something that I've wanted to do. It's like continuing, it counts as continuing education credits if you are ordained and such. So I've actually started that this year, finally. It was like, I remembered to do it at the right time when it was starting. And that is pulling me back.
And I start the second year with the mystery school in September. So that will help me.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to, and I actually had a couple of conversations with Christopher too about, the pandemic and how it was affecting them out in New Hampshire.
Because it screwed everybody.
Yeah. And I don't think we're the only group.
No.
That's where I was going. I don't think we're the only group that's had this problem, and we're still not out of it.
No.
Because we're still working on our relationships with
each other.
And it's a super, I wonder, I've thought about this and not really had a conversation with anybody, but I talked about that line in the sand. I think that it's hard for someone from one side of the sand to try to find common ground with the person that's on the other side of the line in the sand. And I think that might be a hang up for me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and I think this is an over dramatization of the situation, but I fear that subconsciously I'm thinking that there's a bit of a betrayal there.
Well, yeah.
And like I said, that's like unconscious. Like I couldn't be in circle with someone that I thought betrayed me.
Right.
But there's
when you
a
have,
difficulty.
when you have that extreme of a difference of opinion about something so
World affecting.
yeah, and it's personal affecting too, because if somebody you're hanging out with goes out to the bar and gets COVID and doesn't know it and brings it into your house, you know, because they don't think they need to get vaccinated or, you know, wear masks if that's how they
or
feel.
play it safe or whatever.
Right. They don't
Yeah.
feel like they have to, you know, then how do you trust that person to, if you just, it's like, okay, it's like my family, right? Republican Christian, I have nothing in common with my brother at all because he's a Trumplican, just flat out.
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing in common with him. When I
Yeah.
see him, I have nothing to talk to him about.
Right.
Of course, he's, you know, been avoiding me since early on in the pandemic, and
Right.
but it's fine with me. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
But it's that kind of thing when you have such fundamental differences in something that is so important to you. It's
Right.
hard to reach across and go, hey, what can we do to communicate and corroborate and fix this when you know that difference is not going to change?
right.
Because I'm
then
not going
there's-
to change my opinion about vaccines and masks.
Right. And then there's that perception from the other side. I can see where the other side says you're judging me
Right.
because you know, I don't want to wear a mask, or because I don't want to do this, that, or the other.
Right.
So it, you know, I feel like my relationship with many folks in the coven has been damaged. And I don't know how to fix that.
Well, and it's kind of a matter of trust too, right? Because we have to, as leaders, lead in a way that's going to keep everybody safe, and they disagree so strongly, then does that mean they don't trust us to lead? They don't trust us to keep them safe?
Yeah.
It's been very, very difficult. So, I mean, if somebody doesn't trust you, how do you communicate with them? You know?
Right. So we've taken essentially since the beginning of 2022, and we're trying, you know.
Trying.
It's a tough situation, and this,
and it's hard because some people are trying more than others, right? And you can't force people to try. It's fine. It's just, you know, whatever. And they may feel like they're trying, and maybe we're looking at it the wrong way.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm not,
You know.
like, I don't think that it's fair that we're saying that some people aren't trying.
No, yeah, I think you're right on that, because I think everybody is trying, but it goes back to that, what else is going on, and if you don't have the spoons to put effort into things, then you just don't have them.
Right.
And you have to step back. And I sorry to say that I have stepped back some from the coven. Before the pandemic, I was always here for coven study, and now a lot of times I'm at the cabin and remote in for coven study, and I don't necessarily like that, but sometimes it's easier for me to have that distance.
Yeah, so I guess the moral of the story and the big kind of message that we kind of want to share is that the pandemic did a number on us, and we're still
Rebuilding.
We're still rebuilding not only our personal practice, but our coven practice,
Right.
our coven, you know, our coven relationships. And so the reason that we wanted to talk about this is to kind of share our experiences out there and to let people know that if you're experiencing the same thing, you're not alone.
Right.
Or if you were experiencing it and you've come out on the other side, then maybe talk about how things worked for you.
Right.
For those of us that are struggling. And I think we especially want to say to Coven members, both past and present, that, we're not trying to make anybody feel bad.
No.
We're not trying to put the blame on anyone.
We're not trying to shame anyone. We're not trying to blame anyone. Again, it's back to you have to do what is best for you before you can reach out to do interactions or what's best for other people or what can help other people. You have to help yourself first.
Right. And so we wanted to share what this experience has been for us so that we can, so that it's kind of a healing, cathartic thing for us. There's some videos that I've kind of been loosely planning that, kind of hinged on me being able to talk about these experiences first so that you guys out there kind of had at least a little bit of a background before I jumped in and started talking about something, and then you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So giving you a little slice of inside slice.
Yeah, so the pandemic has just been nuts. And, we want to rebuild our own practices. And we are we have things in the works to help rebuild the coven, to make those relationships stronger. We have Realert Away that we do once a year, and I got lots of stuff planned for that. It's my year to plan it. Hopefully Convocation will happen this year in February, so that will help with us reaching out to other people in the pagan community. We did start back up the pagan meetup that we do here locally. We haven't had great attendance, and I don't know if it's because we've been in more public locations. Before we were able to get a back room at a restaurant, and now we're trying to keep things safe for everybody. Summertime, we're at a park, which is not a private park. When the weather's nasty, we've been at a restaurant, but not in a back room. The restaurant charges for the room if you don't have a certain number of people, and 4 people is not going to cut it. So, we're working on rebuilding that. Surprisingly, I think that our relationship didn't really change over the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, it's changed in the aspect that I no longer have a lengthy commute, and so we don't talk every day.
That makes me so sad. We used to have the morning show with Helen and Cathy.
Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately that doesn't happen anymore, but we're trying.
But you're here in my house, right? And we do this, we try to do this once a week. Not for this, obviously, or you guys would be seeing that, but we do other things.
Yeah, we're trying to maintain our relationship here.
Right. And we've been going and doing things. We got plans for not this weekend, but next weekend to go. You're going, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the bottom line is, if something is important enough to you, then you'll work for it.
Right. But again, it is understandable if you don't have the energy to reach out. Yeah. If you don't. Like you're working how many hours a day, it's hard for you sometimes to come over here after work.
Yeah. I'm nearly 50 hours a week.
Right.
So, yeah, and it's a physical job, and it kind of puts me on my butt. So, yeah, so hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, us sharing this is a bit of like a silver lining or a light at the end of the tunnel.
And hopefully it'll get us kick-started back into doing the podcast, because I enjoy them.
Yeah. Yeah, so that kind of leads us into wrapping things up, right. I think.
So if you have any topics that you want us to talk about, please let us know. Helen has all the contact information in the notes below.
The show notes.
Yeah, the show notes.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed this podcast, then we invite you to give it a thumbs up, because apparently that helps. And if you haven't done so already,
please subscribe.
Yes, hit that subscription button. Lots of...
You can find us out there on Instagram and
Facebook.
There's a Facebook group. I keep thinking I'm going to do something with my TikTok, and I haven't done it yet. I mean, I've been watching.
I am not on TikTok, and I shan't be on TikTok.
I send you all the good stuff anyway.
All my friends send me the TikToks
because it's fun. You liked the one I sent you today.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, if you have any topics you want us to discuss, we did leave off last season kind of in the middle of something.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a part 1, and we had to go back and think, what was our last podcast? And now we have to figure out where we left off on that one to continue it.
Yeah.
We do have intentions to continue that. Was that Know Your Witches or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
If I can find the rest of the questions, we can work on answering those.
If you can't, if you have questions about getting to know your witches, leave them in the comments.
Yeah.
Shoot us an email, comment on Instagram, something somewhere.
Absolutely. And comment here about your experiences with your spirituality and difficulties and or not.
And COVID. Something we didn't talk about is we actually did end up getting COVID eventually.
Yeah, both of us did get sick.
I got it in January. Yours was after that, wasn't it?
It was January as well.
Oh, yeah. I did not
January, February.
Did not give it to you because we had not seen each other.
My symptoms were very light because I'm fully vaccinated.
Well, I'm fully vaccinated as well, and I was sicker than a dog.
Yep. So, got lucky. But
yeah.
All right. That's it for this episode.
Okay. We're calling it a good. All right.
Calling it good. All right. I don't remember how we sign off.
Thank you for walking this path a little while with us.
And until next time, blessed be.